Just think how short Father Dale's homily would have been. Dream on. Actually, this one isn't going to be too long because the gospel is so omnipresent. It's so right in your mug. This is one of these beautiful, beautiful gospels, and we lawyers hate these kind of gospels because we like the 77 options in life. If one doesn't work, the second argument will work. If the second argument worked, the third argument will work. And by the way, if the third argument doesn't work, I've got this backstop argument that no one but me would ever try. Not so with this gospel. This gospel it's a beautiful gospel, but it's a little scary, and it's happy. It has pretty much four major themes to it. The first one is it identifies who the Father is. The Father is the vine maker. Now, this is really important because only He can create the vine. And He does this in a different way than you and I were created. As we discussed last weekend, Jesus Christ, the second person of the Trinity, God Himself, was begotten of His Father, not made. We say it every weekend in the Nicene Creed. Begotten, not made. So He's different than us. And He's of the same substance of the Father, which means He is of the Father. That's how we can say Jesus Christ is God. Now, and that gives us a real clarity on the Trinity, how God functions in these three dynamic divine persons. But how about us? Well, Jesus, the Christ, second person of the Trinity, is the vine. And everything requires the vine. If you don't have the vine, you die. And then here comes us, the branches. And what we discover is there are two types of branches. There are the branches that flourish, that blossom. You know, when I read this gospel, I'm always reminded of the 4 years of my life I spent in Japan, where the most beautiful thing that grows in the entire planet blooms for 10 days a year in Japan. And about 80% of the trees are this tree, cherry blossoms. If you've ever seen the movie The Last Samurai, you see at the end real cherry blossoms, by the way. And in Tokyo and all the rest of Japan, during Cherry Blossom Week, or as they call it properly, Sakura Week, everything is pink. In fact, you can see the cherry blossoms from the moon. And Japan looks like a pink puff. And that's the hand of God. And if you go to the imperial palace, what you see is that most of the cherry blossom branches are so heavy, they go into the moat that is around the emperor's palace. And so the moat is pink. Everything is pink. And then the rest of the year, there are no blossoms at all on 80% of the trees. And the Japanese are perfectly happy with that, because better to have 10 days of perfection than 365 days of mediocrity. It's interesting, isn't it? It's an interesting perspective on life. You can learn a lot from it. Likewise, so too are the branches in this analogy. You can be that branch which accepts the food that the vine is giving it and flourishes and spreads that all over the world. Or you can be a branch that becomes convinced that it is its own vine. And those branches, wait for it, die. And when they die, they fall down. And when they fall down, they are gathered up and they are burned in a fiery pit permanently. That's the scary part. But then there's a good part. For those branches who accept the pruning, they flourish. And even though they may die in this world one day, because everything has an end except God, they still live on. We see this at every funeral mass, where life has been well lived and we know that person is alive. That's today's gospel. It is right in your mug. You cannot run from it. And it puts life in very stark terms, doesn't it? Are you someone who creates your own God, small g, perhaps yourself, who believes that he or she who dies with the most toys wins? Is your life driven by social media? Is your life of things of this world? Do you believe success means you have a beach house in Malibu, and of course, when you get bored, a ski villa in Aspen, and of course, when you get more bored, a nice mansion in Newport? Dream on. But why? Why have we become this? And how has this happened? Are you someone who, when you see someone who has nothing coming down the street, you say, drunk, druggy, and not for a minute think, that's a young man. What happened to his life? How do we change its course and its speed? You know, at the 10 o'clock Mass, where we were all dying of heat prostration because the air conditioning wasn't on, and it was like, that was kind of funny, by the way, and it was like 97, you're a tough crowd today, and it was like 97, I know you wanted Father Dale, I won't do it again, okay? And it was about 97 degrees in here with 100% humidity. And there was a cute little baby sitting right here, right where you're sitting, sir. I'd like you to know that. And this little baby kept on Googling at me and held her headband up and wanted to play with me. That was a branch, one of Christ's best branches. And the question was going to become, what was going to become of that branch? Was that branch's parental branches going to take it to Mass every Sunday? Or was it going to be like a funeral I recently attended, where there were a whole lot of people that came to this funeral, and everyone was essentially very loud before Mass. And then when communion time came, about 8 in 10 people coming to communion didn't know how to receive communion. Most of them were Catholic. 10 or 12 of them tried to bring Jesus with them back to their seats because they simply hadn't been to Mass in that long of time. Now, does that make them bad people? No, certainly not. And was I happy to see them there for that funeral Mass? Yes, they honored the terrific person who had died. But what does it say about what their parents had done with them? People ask me, Father, why do you beat up on us constantly about taking our kids and our grandkids to Mass? Well, I'll tell you why I do it. Because you give me 15 seconds with a kid, and I'll tell you a kid who's a friend of Jesus Christ and a friend who's not. A friend whose parents carried out the promise at baptism that they made as a condition of baptism that they would take their children to Mass every Sunday. And parents that did not. If you're friends with Jesus Christ, you grow up and you generally have a pretty terrific life. That doesn't mean all your dreams are going to come true, but you're going to be a friend of Jesus Christ and you're going to have a terrific life. You're going to marry well, and when there are bumps in the marital road, you're going to handle them. But if Jesus is this entity that you just think, you know, at Christmas and Easter, wow, that's nice, look how cute it is, oh, that's wonderful, and that's it, and there's no depth to your faith, have a nice day. You're done. Not all the branches that don't follow Christ's ways and fall down and are thrown in the fiery pit are bad branches. They just didn't follow the way. And that's what we're told. I don't mean to make this a fire and brimstone homily today. That's not my intent. Brimstone's too scary for me to talk about. But what I intend to talk to you about today is why this is important. Jesus, no pope came up with this gospel passage. No bishop, no archbishop, no priest, no deacon. This is the boss, Jesus the Christ. These are his words. I am the vine. You are the branches. Choose. Choose. Are you going to follow me, or are you going to follow the evil one? And the evil one worships everything in this world. Money, greed, indifference, condescension, wickedness, selfishness. Is that your life? Are you consumed with what this world has to offer? Or are you a woman or man for others, for the greater glory of God? Who's your most important priority? You or others? And others can include your family members, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what God wants you to do. But it also includes the young man after the 10 o'clock Mass today who came up to me and said, Father, my mother just died. I have absolutely nothing. I haven't eaten in 4 days. And I'm living on the street. Now, you have a choice at that point. You can take the smelly guy outside, call the police, and have him brought away. Or you can embrace him and say, there, but for the grace of God, go I. You don't judge him, but you help him. And due to the fact that I have pretty terrific parishioners who give me a bunch of Visa $25 cards and backpacks with water in there and Gatorade and some candy bars and chips and stuff like that to keep the chap going, that's exactly what we were able to do. And now, maybe he's got a shot. Maybe not. We're not going to run his life. Every one of us has to make that kind of decision. Are we going to be men and women for others for the greater glory of God, or are we going to be of ourselves? So who's your God? Can we find your God in a bank account? How many beans do I have? There's not enough. I can't share with anyone. Or are you addicted to your computer? Is your life just filled with lust and no love? Do you know how to love? This is the important aspect of life. Do you keep fidelity with your shipmate, your spouse? Are they the most important person in your life if you're married? They better be, because guess what? You will find God in the vocation of marriage with your bunkmate. That's how you find God. That's your vocation. So, gentlemen, look over to your wifey and you see the source of your salvation. Ladies, look over at that guy who used to be really cool when you married him and find the source of your salvation. This is what it's all about. I tell all of my almost married people who are engaged and come in to see me what marriage is about. The indissoluble union between one man and one woman, forsaking all others for the remainder of your natural life with two purposes. One, ever closer intimacy with one another. And two, the acceptance with grace of the gifts of children through the act of God, founded in the act of love. What a great definition. And that's what so many of us are called to. And then there's the vocation of single life, where you live for others, not yourself. What could be worse than to die as a Mr. Potter with $4 billion in the bank and you've never helped anyone? Never married, no kids, nothing to leave behind. But let's say you didn't have any kids. You were never married. But you were the biggest guy or gal in town because you cared for those who had nothing. You're a pretty good branch, in my view. So think of that analogy this week as you go through life. Are you accepting the fruits of the vine? Are you blossoming? Are you pruning your own life so that some of the garbage in your life gets pruned out? And are you a woman or man for others for God's greater glory. Could you be best described as selfish or selfless? And if right now you're a little on the selfish side, become less selfish and a little more selfless. If you do these things, then you will meet up to the last paragraph of today's gospel, where anything you ask of the vine will be granted to you. Isn't that a joyous statement? Anything you ask will be granted to you. And you will hear when you die the clarion call that we all hope to hear. Well done, O good and faithful servant. Now come into the place my Father has prepared for you. Ladies and gentlemen, these are not exhibition games we are living every day. These are regular season games. And the score, alas, counts. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.